This episode of Writer's Row is sponsored by WB Welch and Tori Hunter, whose upcoming zombie novella, The Last Letter, is now available for pre-order on Amazon, and signed paperback copies are available at buywbwelch.com. The Last Letter is a zombie novella for people who don't read zombie stories. Tense, emotional, and gritty, this series of letters explores how fast the dark side of human nature emerges when society collapses. Hey, welcome to Writer's Row, where we talk about writing, the creative side, the business side, and the writing community on Twitter. With me, as always, is Mr. David Gane.
Did you forget my name almost?
No. I didn't introduce myself, but I'll introduce you first.
Well, and I'm with DC Wright-Hammer.
Yes. And we have a very special guest making her second appearance. We're really excited about WB Welch.
Hello.
How are we doing tonight?
WB, you start.
I was like, I don't know who's answering first. I'm doing wonderful. I'm great. It's been a pretty relaxed day, not too much going on my end. How about you?
I am well. I am looking forward to tomorrow because I want to write a lot. And that's all that I care about, plus this beer.
I am planning on writing tomorrow some as well. A special announcement for this episode is it's a surprise. The surprise is a surprise. That's what we tell our kids. It's in this book that we read. But I am currently writing the third book in the Between Two Minds series, and I've taken on a mysterious co-author. And so...
Do we ever find out who the mysterious co-author is?
No, I might have mentioned it in another video, but I want to just put it out there again to spark people's interests, because we're starting to pick up on that book, and it won't be ready for a little while, but yeah, so this whole co-author thing is very interesting to me, and I think we all have experience in that, which is kind of cool.
This is the co-author episode right here.
Right?
Yeah. You guys are all novices, though. Work with one for 10 years and see where you're at.
Give him a second. He's going to lean over to the side and show us his awards, because that's what he does. He's just so excited. And he thinks that I have a thing about him. I don't have a thing. I just like busting his balls.
He just tells me that's not a competition, but obviously it is.
Right. And so my joke back to him is, how much did those participation trophies cost? Can I get some?
You know what? And I'm kind of sad because I was hoping to have another one up there this year, but it's not there. Oh, actually, by the time this airs, I do get to probably announce we did get to be a finalist in other things. So that's going to be posted officially, I think, at the end of May. So whenever this airs.
Yeah. After that, what's the thing? Can you say that or no?
No, because it's not coming to my mind. Because I put it until it officially is there. I just put it off until then. So, but yeah, we did become a finalist. It's in a kind of I think it's international competition. And it's Indie Book Awards basically, but the specific designation. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know how big of it a pool of people went into it. But yeah, out of all of them were in the top 5, and it's for Shepherd's Watch and Wolf and Shepherd's Clothing. So our little boy, that our number 2 that is trying to chug along, got an extra little nomination, which we always like hearing about. So
very cool.
Yeah, so it's all a competition to me, DC.
And you've been winning the whole time. Which is a good segue into the topic for this episode. We have WB on, which we're really excited about again. And this time we wanted to talk about the horror genre, which is one in which she writes in. It's one that I am very fascinated with. David, I think you had mentioned previously that you actually got your start in horror. And so The horror genre is enormous. You've got monsters, you've got psychological horror, you've got the different ways to essentially elicit fear. And I was talking to you all before the show about, hey, we all try to set up our lives to be secure and safe and happy, and yet there's something about the horror genre that keeps bringing us back to wanting to be scared. And I know there's some people who kind of say, oh, no, I can't handle anything scary. But there's a significant portion of the population worldwide that say, I like horror. And so I guess what I'll open this show with is, what do you guys think that is? Why do people want to be scared when the whole point in life is to get comfortable and to live a happy life? And let's start with WB because I'm happy to have her here.
Well, thank you. I want to say first off, thank you for having me. I think that people like to, I don't like to speak for people. I feel like it's always just a generalization, but for the most part, people like horror because it's a safe way to get an adrenaline rush, right? If you go jump out of a plane, you actually might die. But if you go watch a scary movie, unless there is a unexpected situation, for the most part, you can expect to walk out of there safe, having experienced your adrenaline rush for the day or for the week or what have you. But I think there's something to that more that's deep and psychological, and I think it's another way that some of us get off, right? We enjoy that moment, that peak, whatever it is at the time, and some of us to get that scared feeling that almost makes you want to look away from the screen. That's something just magnificent, and if somebody can make you do that, it's a great goddamn movie, or it's a really good book,
or in your case, yeah, out of the page. And what do you think, David?
I actually I agree with WB. I find I'm like she said, I'm going to talk more from myself. I was terrified of being terrified when I was a kid, and I just kind of kept on forcing myself to get into scary movies and scary books and stuff like that. And now it's kind of gotten to this point where I really do want to be scared, and I find it's harder and harder because I don't know if I'm cynical or, I've seen enough that I'm searching for that thing. But yeah, if I get a good chill down my back when I'm reading a book or watching a movie, then that to me is the best feeling in the world, right?
Yeah. I think I agree with both of you. I like both of those definitions. I think where I come from with horror is there's certain things in the world, there's certain things that happen in your life, and your mind doesn't want to think about them. It's almost like a reaction, or your mind sets up boundaries and says, that's not safe, don't think about that. And then I really like the psychological aspect of horror. And I like to be able to break through those where my mind is saying, don't think about this. And there's some things that are even behind more doors that you'd have to work out to get to. But, being safe in my own mind and being able to explore those topics, those things that you don't want to think about, those things that are scary, that do scare you, but overcoming them. And sometimes you need a book, or sometimes you need a movie or something like that to take you there, to make you think about that. And I think the example that I was going to give, and I wanted to talk to WB about this because I have read a few of the anthology in her book.
How excited she gets, because I'm the exact same way.
Right.
Whenever she's like, "Oh, good, let's get into my terror."
So I won't spoil anything, and I don't think it could be spoiled. A very short story in Blood Drops, the anthology of short horror stories that she has. There's a story called Undo, and I read it. So first off, I read the first two stories. I think there was one or two before it, and they were good. And then I get to this one, and I'm like, oh, this is a short one. Cool, let me get into it. And I told her before the show, I'm like, she won. She got me. Like, it doesn't happen anymore. It hardly ever happens where I don't want my mind to go somewhere. I think, oh, nobody should write about that. I think that in my head. That shouldn't be written about. And she did. She wrote about it, but she wrote about it in a way that was artistic. She wrote about it in a way that was realistic, that elicited all of the best and worst responses from me. It triggered, I won't give everything away. It triggered some internal instincts in me to say that, no, this is bad, this is wrong. And I actually like put the book down. I'm like, I can't read anymore. After that, it knocked the wind out of me.
For a while.
And it was like 5 paragraphs. It was like 5 paragraphs, and I'm a grown-ass man, and it knocked the wind out of me. So bravo. So I really appreciate that story. I'm going to get back to it, but it scared me. And so now I have to overcome that fear to finish Blood Drops. But I will, and you'll get a good review from me. So
thank you. I appreciate it.
So I kind of want to get into that artistic. Where are you writing from when you write your stuff, WB?
I have a lot of random ideas. So sometimes my story ideas are simply one line. As an example from my book, The Water Stain, that story came from the opening line. It all started with a dead squirrel. I don't know where that came from. I was in the car. That line popped into my head, so I put it in my note app to save it because I have a note app where I have like all these random ideas, and it sat for months before I was sitting down writing one night, and I came across that note and I felt a connection with it. So I sat down and just concentrated on it for a little while, and then The Water Stain somehow evolved out of that. I don't know, that one was an odd one. But
definitely expanded and kind of went big.
Sometimes there's a premise, as with what's that one called? House Arrest. Sorry, I have a horrible memory, by the way. Yep. House Arrest. That one came about because a friend of mine and a girl from my writers group said she wanted a story about man eating plants. So I was like, okay, I remember, Little Shop of Horrors. Let me see how I can do it different. But I have always been a consumer of horror, whether it's in the written or the visual form, since I was about 8 years old. Like you, David, it used to scare the goodness out of me. And so it became something that I needed to face. So I have consumed a lot of horror. That being said, whenever I'm writing, usually the only time where I'm trying to actually come up with the horror aspect, I say, how can I make it horror, and how can I make it hit, and then how can I make it different? Because I don't like seeing things that have been done a million times. I don't like seeing things that don't make sense, like somebody acting against what would be natural instinct in a situation. And then I want to make sure that it actually makes an impact. But sometimes with undo, like that one wasn't intentional. That must have been some type of subconscious fear that came out of me when I sat down to write, and I was obviously in a mood that day, and that one came out on its own. I channeled it and it was there, and I was like, oh my goodness, what did I just write?
And I want to actually mention one of my favorites is Antics. And you actually said it's an art piece that drew that one out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that was actually the one that I was like, oh, it didn't go, it zigged when I expected it to zag, sort of thing, right? And that was the punchline to it that I loved. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. And I'm sorry, I'm taking over your show, DC, but one of the other things I really like about your collection is I always think of them more as almost sketches rather than like big stories, right? Where it's like DC said, they're so quick and so like, what was the one that punchy? It's like 5 paragraphs and then it delivers, right? And I that's one of the things that really appealed to me about it, and definitely I'm going to steal it all from you, doing those tighter faster stories.
Well, and
I've always loved them because one of my literary influences is going to always be Hemingway, and he had in his first collection these like 2-3 paragraph little small stories that would just punch out in the middle. So, and I always loved that. So, yeah.
Well, and I was just sorry. Were you going to say something, Debbie?
No, I'm good.
Well, I was talking to her.
Oh, I didn't hear.
Okay. I was just going to say, I used to do short stories. I used to do dark poetry a long time ago, and I lost that. And like long form is what I prefer, but reading blood drops and I think it's really easy to do with horror. I think it's really easy to elicit response and get really actually deliver in a short amount of time. Whereas like I do character driven adventures. So my characters are going from point A to point B, and that takes time. And I do want the reader to have this like coursing back and forth and figuring things out and building the world. But it is nice to get to some fiction and get to, particularly horror, where it's just get in, wrap my head around it, and then like you said, it's almost like a dark punchline. It's like dark comedy, but it's to elicit fear and terror and dread, and it's really neat. It's sort of inspiring me, like David said. I want to get back into doing some of the shorter, punchier stuff.
I appreciate that. Actually, some of the shorter stories evolved because I participated in Blogtober, which was an event at the end of last year. I accidentally said I was going to participate in before I knew what it was. And I thought it was something where you were advertised or you were marketed, but it turns out it was something where you needed to post something new every day. And all I had was a short story blog. So that means I need to post a new short story every day. And I didn't have a backlog of stories. So hence getting to the point. So I started challenging myself. How quick can I get to the point? How quick can I make somebody feel something? How quick can I make somebody feel like they care about this character and then snatch the rug out from under them, and all of a sudden they're left going, what just happened? So there's a couple of them that I did include in Blood Drops. Undo was one of them, and Mall Food is the other one. Whenever you get to that one, DC.
Mm-hmm. Keep an eye out for it.
That's the other super short one.
I'm like looking at my little book here. I'm like, which one was Mall Food now?
Mall Food. Whenever I posted that one on my blog, I actually felt the need to post a disclaimer with it that if you're going to read this, it might offend you, because I didn't want to get any complaints after saying that I didn't post some kind of warning with that story. But that being said, I did take those stories off the blog to put them in the book. But that's where the short inspiration came from. Side note, interesting thing, when you're writing short fiction, sometimes people don't expect that. So whenever they read your work, they expect more setting and more world building, and sometimes feel like they've completely missed something because you didn't give them that.
Are they upset because you didn't give them that?
Some people, yes. Some people love it. Some people don't.
Is that comments that you had when you were doing it as the blog posts, or was that from the collection itself?
From the book. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like you probably have gotten reviews or something like, where's the rest? And that's just rude, because it's clear anthology, it's clear short stories, and I think readers can do what they want, right? They purchase something and they get to decide how and when they review, how long it is, how effective it is. I wouldn't try to take that from them. That being said, some reviews are better than others. Some are more helpful, some are more critical, some are longer, and some are like short stories. They get to the punchline real quick and they tell you what was good, what they liked, and all that. And so I think, I understand that. And I think we all experience that in different ways. For mine, it's the opposite, in fact. Some people will get into my book and it's written from an odd point of view. It kind of does what we call a zipper narrative, where there's two different narratives that come together. Well, people don't get that in the first 5 chapters usually, and they're like, well, why am I being dumped into a new scene in this chapter, and why am I being dumped into a new scene this chapter? And they don't actually start to see, it doesn't unravel until 5, 6, 7, 8 chapters in, and they start to get into a rhythm. But some people put the book down and give it 2 stars and say, it was kind of cool, but I couldn't just get, it was too, weaving back and forth, and I didn't really get into it. But kind of pivoting on the topic of the show in horror, I like the genre so much, and I don't like being pigeonholed, that I actually did incorporate a couple of scenes in each of my book that might be classified as horror. They're psychological experiences by the main character. And David read actually book 1 in my series, and it's just this scene that I couldn't get out of my head, where I wanted a person to have this kind of psychological trip and see sort of the path. But I'm like, how can I make this really sort of punchy? How can I make it stand out and leave people on a cliffhanger? And so I did this cool scene where there's a little girl who's got all these medical tubes in her, and she opens her eyes and they're completely black. Like this chilling scene that was already set, and this was like the final thing that this person sees, and there's no explanation to it. It really is just to give the reader this this emotion and it was part of the pacing that I was trying to do throughout the book, is have the thriller aspect, have the psychological aspect, but every chapter that I write, I try to make it self-contained, like almost like an episode in a TV show. And this particular episode had to end in a very dark and chilling way.
So I'm kind of curious about both of you then. When you're writing horror, what's your approach then to what you put on the page? Like, what do you believe needs to be on the page for it to be horror?
WB?
For me, horror is anything that makes somebody uncomfortable. So, like, I've gotten a lot of feedback that blood drops isn't really horror. And I feel like that's kind of fair, but I feel like it's kind of not too. Like, I understand everybody's definition of horror is a little bit different, and some people might expect more blood and guts and gore and, jump scare type of stuff for horror. But that being said, if I feel like horror is anything that makes somebody physically or emotionally uncomfortable. And that's all I strive for. Like, I had somebody tell me that my writing is, I like to leave like a gut punch to my readers. So that's kind of become my goal.
So when you think of it as a gut punch, is it I'm trying to think of the right word. Like no, is it an uncomfortable feeling is all you want as the gut punch? Or is it a shock, or is it a whatever works in the story?
For the most part, I feel like it's whatever works. I don't know that I've always just been a horror writer. Blood Drops is horror. But some of the other stuff that I've done has, if it's not horror, it's very drama and emotional. Like it's going to make you feel something. So that's probably where the gut punch thing comes from. But sorry, I'm messing with something over here. As far as like, if we're just talking horror, anything is that I'm aiming for is to make somebody feel uncomfortable. I'm sorry, I got distracted.
Because you destroyed your side of the house.
Yeah. Yeah, is everything okay over there? Do you need to clean up or?
No, I'm good. I'm just, champagne.
Yep. Okay. See, I love tangents, and I'm gonna tell you a quick tangent. Started an interview just before the interview started. I spilled a whole bottle of water all over my desk and all over the floor, and I had to clean that up. It was chaos, and it was a great way to start that interview.
I've got one better for you. I got interviewed by a guy whose fly was open the whole interview. And I had to do the whole interview, like, and I couldn't say anything.
Why?
And then, well, because, like, I don't know.
Dude, you're fine. Look down.
But before I left, I'm like, hey, look, dude, I got to tell you, like, and I was professional about it, but I'm like, hey, there's something I got to tell you before I leave. And he's like, what is it? And he was a young guy. He's actually younger than me, and he was interviewing me, and I'm like, your fly was open the whole interview. He's like, oh, thank you. And I'm like, I had to tell you.
I'm just going to cut my crotch out of this whole thing.
Or was it on radio? What was it?
No. It was in person. We were in the same room, and it was for a job interview, if that's what you're asking. It was literally like, he became my boss. In our first interaction, his fly was just better than my fly being open the whole time. So if you want to talk about horror, give an interview with your fly open the whole time. That'll make you uncomfortable. That's like a gut punch.
Yeah.
And it's worse than a dick pic. No, I don't know. Anyway, that's from our last episode, if you remember.
Oh my God.
My take on horror is similar to WB's. I think I like the slow build up to something creepy, the slow build up to in some cases it is like falling off a ledge, but inching the reader to that thing, that dreadful thing, whatever it is, and either doing it very slowly, like torture to some extent, or pushing them over the edge. In my second book, I did another psychological thing, which I won't get into, but I also did a scene, and I was close to putting a content warning about this scene because it was sort of, it could have been, construed, but what I did with this scene was, it was one person trying to take advantage of another, and I tried to push that as far as I could artistically without actually, being inappropriate about it, I guess, but just staying inside the head of the person. And they don't think specifics. They don't think like, oh, I'm going to be taken advantage of. They think like, I'm in danger and I need to figure this out. And so walking through their psychological unraveling and how they think, maybe if I do this, it'll be fine. Maybe if I do this, it'll be okay. And so the reader inside your character is actually being taken to the brink, and they have to figure out a way to get out of this situation. And the way they get out is very shocking, or the way the depths of which they have to go to is like a gut punch, is something that the reader might even know is coming, but by the time you get to it, it elicits that emotion, that shock, that awe, that like, I can't believe that just happened, and I'm moved by it, and like, I don't know how I feel about it. It makes them uncomfortable.
Okay, so I'm going to ask another question. Is who are you writing to when you're writing? Are you writing to a specific person, and who are you trying to kind of deliver the horror to? WB, I'm going to start with WB.
I would say first and foremost, I'm trying to traumatize myself, which is hard because I've seen a lot. So I know I push boundaries, and I probably say things that offend people. And I probably, like you said, I write about things that most people wouldn't write about. I actually have a story called The Day I Killed the Dog that's on my blog, I think, still. And like 70% of the people that I talk to wouldn't even read it, because obviously it's about a sensitive topic, killing a dog, which is touchy for me, even because I love the hell out of animals. Like, I'm a big animal person, and it was really hard for me to write. But that being said, I had the idea, and to not pursue it felt like kind of a betrayal to myself. So I felt like I needed to put it down and put it out there. Yeah. So I'm trying to scare myself. I'm trying to make myself look away. I'm trying to traumatize me. And if I can do that, I feel like I'm probably going to traumatize somebody else in the process.
Okay. How about you, DC?
Well, and I think being an indie author and being able to make those decisions, I think, is important. I I can't write for an audience. I don't want to write for an audience. I want to write for myself, and I want to write what the story needs. And artistically, what does it need? What are the characters? Where do they need to go? And what do they need? And how can I make it different? How can I give it a little bit of extra edge to it that is going to, complete the whole? I think with my first book, I kind of wandered in a lot of directions with that. In the end, it is a complete story, but I kind of I had an outline for that, and I pantsed my way through that outline. If that, the Plancer or whatever they call the hybrid. Book 2 is very tight. It was, here's my outline. Here are the things I need to do. It's actually a prequel and a sequel in one, which is like a no-no. They tell you not to do that, but I was like, whatever, I'm going to do it anyway.
You almost defend yourself on that. I think you need to let that go. Just
I don't know.
I'm
because
like,
a critic is going to read this, and they're like, ugh, and I'm like, well, guess what? I know what you think, and I don't care. But I kind of care, but I really don't. But no, and I think so. Writing, especially horror, it's when since I write sci-fi thrillers, I stick horror in there as a change of pace to sort of get the reader's attention again. Basically, I've showed them I can thrill them. I've showed them I can sci-fi them. But at a certain point, I need them to come back to me emotionally and get reinvested. And I think horror is a great way to do that. You hear my cat likes horror too.
He's finally come. I was like, where is he?
We fed her this episode, expecting.
Oh, there she is. She's in the corner. Or is there another one? Well, there's another one on the couch too.
Yeah, they're all over. No, there's only 2 of them. I am not a cat man. Our cat man thing, they always say cat women, cat ladies. You can't. Are there cat men out there? Probably.
Cat man, so.
Anyway, no. So, as not a traditional horror writer, I use it as a way to have a little more punch to a certain, usually just 1 or 2 chapters. But yeah, that's what I try to do.
And I just want to throw this in because I want to answer this question as well.
Yes.
Because I don't write for myself. Like I don't, most things don't scare the hell out of me anymore, but I know my favorite thing is to give my writing partner, she gets chills, she gets goosebumps and all kinds of stuff. And I just try and write to entertain her, and then I write to entertain my kids and my wife, right? So if I can bug them or upset them, then I'm happy. Our first book has an attack in a public bathroom in the first couple of chapters. And we've had a lot of people tell us that they don't want to ever have go into a public bathroom again. And I'm like, oh, okay, I like that. I appreciate that.
I don't want to go there in the first place. After reading that, now I'm never going to want to go back. But.
So, and then there was, in book 3, there was, and because we write young adult murder mysteries, there is well, actually, okay, so in book 1, there's a scene near the end that people reacted to, and then I basically took that and turned the entire last act of book 3 into that scene, and made it like it's WB kind of creepy, right? That's what I'm going to use as my word now.
WB creepy.
WB creepy. But there was like this one scene where they see a saw blade, and of course there's something in the saw blade, teeth and stuff like that, and I had to actually like pull myself back so it wasn't so gory. But even to this day, the line that ends up in the book, I was like, that's still like, it leaves a lot to the imagination, and that makes it worse.
Yep.
And I love that. I love the imagination. How are we doing on time? Because I really want to ask one more question.
We're okay. We probably have a quick one.
Okay. Because WB, one of the first things I got to know about you is that I tried to, like, you were like, I want Stephen King to read my book. And no one had done it. I was like, hey, Stephen King, read your book. And or read her book, I should say, not read his book. So is Stephen King one of your influences?
As far as the written word for horror goes, yes.
And visual, who's your influence there?
First one that comes to mind is Guillermo del Toro.
Okay.
I really like a lot of his horror. I've also consumed a lot of H.P. Lovecraft and Clive Barker over the years. Oh goodness, I've forgotten a massive director horror name, and it's gonna come back to haunt me, I know, but
Carpenter.
Wes Craven.
Oh, okay.
I was a big Wes Craven fan back in the 90s. I spent so much of my time in Blockbuster back in the days, guys. You don't know. The horror section at Blockbuster, that was my thing.
That was your jam?
Yeah.
What Wes Craven film is your favorite? I'm judging you, just so you know, as we say these things.
Back and forth between Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream. I really like both of those series, and as they go on, things change. But the original on both of those was fucking brilliant to me.
I think that Nightmare on Elm Street, there's a few scenes that bother me, or I don't like in it, but the scene where the girlfriend is being rubbed all over the room, that was one of the movie scenes that I walked in when my sister was watching it, and I'm like, oh, I'm out of here, and it took me a long time to get back there. So, and now that I watch it, I'm like, yeah, now I know why I love that scene so much.
Yeah, it's so wonderful.
Yeah.
Very cool.
How about you, DC? Do you have any horror influences?
I do. I think I like the more psychological horror. So, Into the Mouth of Madness, if you've seen that one with Sam Neill, and another Sam Neill movie, Event Horizon, is a
I believe as well.
What's that?
I want to say John Carpenter, I think, did Into the Mouth of Madness.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Event Horizon is a sci-fi horror flick that sticks with me to this day. And there's been a number of ones out there. I like the Cube series, the idea of the Cube series.
Canadian.
What's that?
It's Canadian too.
Yeah, right? So these psychological thrillers that are science fiction related and totally get into your head. So those are a few. Brain Scan from the 1990s, if you remember that one.
It's the first scary movie I ever saw.
Thank you. That's like one of my number, and it's totally predictable if you watch it today. But it, like, as a 11-year-old, it was terrifying and super cool and super awesome. So
I saw it when I was 8, and it scared the crap out of me.
There you go. So
have you gone back to watch that film now?
It's totally cheesy, but it's totally awesome. So had to drop that because I think I remember bringing it up, and you said that, WB. So I wanted to remember to mention that. So
I love it.
We've run out of time. Let's get to our promotions at the end, and we will start with, let's do David, myself, and then we'll let WB wrap it up.
All right. Okay, so I'm gonna self-promote again, kunyasandgane.com, but I brought 2 good horror picks from kunyasandgane.com. I think we've talked a lot about this one. There you go.
I've got the ebook over here. Does that count?
Yeah, you gotta like scan it over. It's the one thing I love about this is it's super quick, consumable. Like, you read a couple of short stories, get a couple of chills, and then you can put it down for the day and kind of take a nice, fun, leisurely read. If you have a reluctant reader, this is a fantastic book who loves horror. And then Dawn's book, I really like. It's
Dawn
not I'm never gonna live that one down. So it's more psychological and dramatic, but there are a couple of moments that I was like, whoa, Dawn, geez.
Which got her the reputation of being a serial killer.
Like WB kind of creepy in the delivery. So
Cool.
yeah. And I actually, I didn't bring yours, but I think it was the first chapter. I sent you the note after I read it. I was like, whoa, is that ever a little gory? It surprised me. So DC, your first chapter of your first book.
Yeah, the prologue.
Yes, it was a little, it surprised me. I didn't expect that in the book.
Right.
So it was a little gorier than I thought it would be. So, and then it eased off a bit.
Dovetails into not gory, yes. All right, I'll do a quick self-promotion of Book 2 in the Between Two Minds series. Fun fact, the prologue in Book 2 picks up at the end of the prologue in Book 1, so there's some continuity there if you're wondering what happens after the prologue in Book 1. I do prologues because I like prologue. I am pro-prologue.
Prologue too.
And go to Wright-Hammer.com. You can get signed copies of Book 1 and Book 2 in the Between Two Minds series.
Awesome. And you have signed copies on yours too, WB, right? On your website?
I do. I actually have a website by WBWelch.com, like BUI, like, by WB Welch. But that's where I sell signed copies of blood drops, and I sell merch that has to do with blood drops. And since we're in the self-promo area, I'm going to go ahead and talk about The Last Letter, the zombie novella that Tori and I have coming out summer of 2019. If you're looking for a new zombie read, definitely check it out. It's going to be amazing. We're both very excited about it.
Awesome.
We'll put all the links, descriptions, and all the things in the gobbledygook downstairs. And subscribe. If you're watching this long, you better like and subscribe, because why the hell not? And we appreciate everyone. Every minute you watch is great. So thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, WB. Really appreciate it.
I had a great time.